Ambassador Vrextal had served the Corvani Collective for 40 years. He had met species from 100 different worlds. He had learned 12 alien languages. He had solved problems that others said could not be solved. But nothing in his long career had prepared him for humans. The humans had joined the Galactic Council only 3 years ago. They came from a small blue planet at the edge of explored space. Most species ignored them at first. Humans were new. Humans were primitive. Humans had only discovered faster than light travel 2 decades ago. What could they possibly offer to civilizations that had traveled the stars for thousands of years? But Vrextal was curious. He always had been. While other ambassadors dismissed the humans, he studied them. He watched their representatives in council meetings. He read their public records. He tried to understand how they thought and what they valued. What he found confused him. The humans talked about peace. They signed treaties of friendship. They offered trade and cooperation. But there was something in their eyes that Vrextal could not explain. A hardness, a watchfulness. Like prey animals who had learned to bite back, when the Galactic Council asked for volunteers to host the first human cultural exchange program, Vrextal raised his hand. His colleagues thought he was foolish. The Corvani homeworld was a paradise. They had not known violence in 10,000 years. Why bring unknown aliens into their peaceful society? But Vrextal believed that understanding was the path to friendship, and friendship was the path to peace. So he filed the paperwork, prepared the guest quarters, and waited for the humans to arrive. The human ship entered Corvani orbit on a bright morning in early spring. Vrextal stood at the landing platform with a delegation of 20 officials. They wore their finest ceremonial robes. They carried gifts of flowers and fruit. They had practiced human greeting rituals for weeks. The ship touched down with a gentle hiss. The door opened, and Ambassador Kate Morrison stepped out into the golden sunlight. She was small. That was the first thing Vrextal noticed. Humans were so much smaller than he had expected. Kate Morrison stood barely 5 feet tall. Her hair was brown and cut short. Her eyes were green and very bright. She wore a simple gray uniform with a blue patch on the shoulder. She looked up at Vrextal and smiled. Corvani were tall beings. Vrextal stood over 7 feet. He had purple fur and 3 eyes arranged in a triangle on his face. His hands had 6 fingers each. His legs bent backward at the knee. To most species, Corvani looked strange. Sometimes frightening, but Kate Morrison did not look frightened. She looked up at him like she was greeting an old friend. "Ambassador Vrextal," she said. Her voice was warm and confident. "Thank you for having me. Your world is beautiful." Vrextal bent down to her level. This was the human custom. Eye contact was important to them. "Ambassador Morrison," he replied. "Welcome to Corvin Prime. We hope your stay will be pleasant and educational for both our peoples." Kate nodded. Behind her, human workers were already unloading crates from the ship. There were dozens of them. Large boxes marked with human writing. "What are those?" Vrextal asked. Kate's smile grew wider. "Cultural materials. Music, art, literature, history. The council asked us to share our heritage with your people." I took that request very seriously. Vrextal felt a flutter of excitement in his chest. This was exactly what he had hoped for. To understand humans, he needed to understand their culture, their stories, the things they valued and believed. "We have prepared a cultural center for the exchange," he said. "Our people are very eager to learn about humanity." "And I am eager to learn about the Corvani," Kate replied. "I have read everything I could find about your species. But reading is not the same as experiencing." They walked together toward the transportation vehicles. Kate asked questions about everything she saw. The architecture, the plants, the vehicles, the clothing. She was curious about all of it. Her questions were smart and thoughtful. Vrextal found himself liking her very much over the next few weeks. The cultural exchange began in earnest. Human musicians performed concerts in Corvani parks. Human artists displayed paintings and sculptures in public galleries. Human historians gave lectures about Earth's past. The Corvani were fascinated. They had never seen species quite like humans before. So small and fragile-looking, yet so confident. So young in the galactic community, yet so rich in culture and history. Rextel attended every event. He took notes. He asked questions. He tried to understand the patterns in human thinking, but it was the human literature that interested him most. One evening, Kate invited him to her quarters for dinner. The food was strange but not unpleasant. Some kind of grain with vegetables and a thick brown sauce. Kate called it stir-fry. After they ate, she showed him her personal collection of books. "These are my favorites," she said, running her fingers along the spines. "I brought them from Earth. Some of them belong to my grandmother." Rextel looked at the titles. He could read human writing now, though slowly. Pride and Prejudice. The Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter. Grimm's Fairy Tales. What is this last one? He asked. Fairy Tales? Kate pulled the book from the shelf. It was old and worn. The cover showed a dark forest with two children walking on a path. Fairy tales are stories we tell to children, she explained. Very old stories. They have been passed down for hundreds of years. Maybe thousands. Stories for children, Rextel repeated. He was very interested now. The stories a species told to its young revealed much about its values. What kind of stories? Oh, all kinds. Stories about magic and adventure. About good and evil. About clever heroes who overcome terrible odds. Kate smiled fondly at the book. They always end happily. That is the rule of fairy tales. No matter how dark the story gets, good wins in the end. Rextel's three eyes brightened. We have similar traditions. Stories about cooperation and friendship. About helping others and being kind. Then you will love these, Kate said. She handed him the book. Take it. Read them. Share them with your people if you like. I think fairy tales are one of humanity's greatest treasures. Rextel held the book carefully. It was lighter than he expected. Such a small thing to contain so much meaning. Thank you, Ambassador Morrison. I will treat it with great respect. That night, Rextel sat in his quarters and opened the book. He read the first story slowly, looking up unfamiliar words. Then he read another. And another. By morning, he had finished the entire book. He sat very still for a long time. His fur had gone pale. His hands were shaking. His mind was racing with thoughts he could not organize. Then he reached for his communication device and called an emergency meeting of the community elders. The humans, he realized, were not what they seemed. Not even close. And he had just agreed to share their stories with Corvani children. The emergency meeting did not go as Rextel had hoped. Elder Crixina was the oldest member of the community council. She had lived for 200 years. Her fur had turned silver long ago. Her eyes were clouded with age but still sharp with wisdom. She listened patiently as Rextel explained his concerns about the human fairy tales. When he finished, she made a soft sound that might have been laughter. Rextel, she said gently, you have always been cautious. It is one of your best qualities. But perhaps you are being too cautious now. But the stories, Rextel protested. Elder, you do not understand. In one story, a wolf eats an old woman alive. In another, children are abandoned in a forest to die. In another, a queen orders a huntsman to cut out a young girl's heart. The other elders shifted uncomfortably. Such things were difficult for Corvani to imagine. These are stories for children? Asked Counselor Venra. He was younger than Crixina, but still old by Corvani standards. Yes, the humans call them bedtime stories. They read them to children before sleep. Perhaps something was lost in translation, Crixina suggested. Human language is complex. Maybe these stories mean something different than you think. Rextel shook his head. I checked the translations 3 times. The meanings are clear. A witch tries to eat 2 children. A wolf devours a grandmother. A stepmother tries to murder her stepdaughter out of jealousy. But you said the stories end happily, Venra pointed out. They do. But the happy endings are... Rextel struggled to find the right words. The happy endings are violent. The witch is burned alive. The Volf is cut open with an axe. The stepmother is forced to dance in hot iron shoes until she dies. Silence filled the council chamber. And the humans consider this happy? Crixina asked quietly. They do. Ambassador Morrison told me these stories are one of humanity's greatest treasures. She asked me to share them with our children. The elders looked at each other. Their expressions were troubled. This is strange indeed, Crixina admitted. But I do not think we should cancel the cultural exchange over children's stories. Perhaps we should ask Ambassador Morrison to explain them more fully. I agree, said Venra. Humans are different from us. Their ways may seem strange, but they have been nothing but kind and respectful since they arrived. We should not judge them based on ancient stories alone. Rextel wanted to argue further, but the elders had made their decision. And perhaps they were right. Perhaps he was overreacting. Perhaps these stories were simply relics of a more primitive time, kept alive for tradition's sake. He decided to test the theory. The community center hosted weekly educational events for young Corvani. Children came to learn about science, art, and history. It was the perfect place to introduce human culture. Rextel chose what he thought was the gentlest story in the book. It was called Hansel and Gretel. Yes, there was a witch who wanted to eat children. But the witch was defeated. The children escaped. They found treasure and returned home to their father who loved them. If any story could work, he thought it was this one. He gathered 20 younglings in the story circle. They sat on soft cushions, their purple fur freshly groomed, their eyes bright with excitement. They had heard that Rextel would read them a human story. An alien story. How exciting. How new. Rextel sat in the storyteller's chair. He held the book open on his lap. The illustrations were colorful and detailed. Surely that would help. This is a story from Earth, he began. From the humans. It is called Hansel and Gretel. It is about 2 brave children. The younglings leaned forward eagerly. Once upon a time, Rextel read, there lived a poor woodcutter with his wife and 2 children. The boy was named Hansel and the girl was named Gretel. So far so good. The younglings seemed engaged. Times were hard. There was not enough food. The woodcutter did not know how to feed his family. The younglings' ears drooped slightly. Hunger was a concept they knew from history lessons. It made them sad to think about. The woodcutter's wife was not the children's real mother. She was their stepmother. And she had a cruel idea. She told the woodcutter that they must take the children deep into the forest and leave them there. That way there would be enough food for the adults. A youngling raised her hand. Leave them? You mean like a game? Rextel's throat felt tight. No, little one. Not like a game. They meant to abandon the children forever. But why? So they would not have to share their food. The youngling's eyes went wide. But that is wrong. That is very wrong. Yes, Rextel agreed. It is, but the story gets better. I promise. He continued reading. The children were taken into the forest. Hansel had cleverly dropped pebbles to mark the path. They found their way home. The stepmother was angry. She convinced the woodcutter to try again. This time, Hansel could only drop breadcrumbs. The birds ate them. The children were lost. The younglings were very quiet now. Some were holding hands with their neighbors. But then, Rextel said, trying to sound cheerful, the children found something wonderful. A house made of candy and cake. A house made of treats. The younglings perked up. This was better. A candy house sounded lovely. A kind old woman lived in the house. She invited the children inside. She gave them food and soft beds to sleep in. Smiles appeared on small faces. But the old woman was not what she seemed. She was a witch. And she planned to eat the children. The smiles vanished. She locked Hansel in a cage. She began to fatten him up. Every day she fed him good food, waiting until he was plump enough to cook. A youngling started crying. She made Gretel work as a slave, cleaning and cooking. The witch could not see well. Her eyes were bad. So every day she asked Hansel to stick out his finger so she could feel if he was fat enough yet. But clever Hansel stuck out a bone instead. The witch thought he was still too thin. More younglings were crying now. Rextal pressed on. The ending was happy. He just had to reach the ending. Finally, the witch grew impatient. She decided to eat Hansel anyway. She told Gretel to climb into the oven to check if it was hot enough. "The oven?" a youngling whispered. But Gretel was clever too. She knew what the witch planned, so she pretended not to understand. She asked the witch to show her how to climb into the oven. When the witch leaned in to demonstrate, Gretel pushed her. Rextal paused. Every eye was fixed on him. The room was completely silent except for soft crying. Gretel pushed the witch into the oven, and she closed the door. And the witch burned to death, a youngling screamed. "But it is happy," Rextal said desperately. The children were free. They took the witch's treasure. They found their way home. Their stepmother had died while they were gone. They lived with their father and they were never hungry again. They lived happily ever after. He closed the book. The younglings stared at him. Their eyes were huge. Their ears were flat against their heads. Several had gone very pale. Then chaos erupted. 20 younglings fled in all directions. Some screamed. Some cried. 3 fainted on the spot. 1 tried to dig a hole in the floor with his small claws. Another ran straight into a wall and fell down. Rextal sat frozen in the storyteller's chair. The book lay open on his lap. The final illustration showed 2 smiling children walking home through a sunny forest, bags of gold in their hands. Smoke rising cheerfully from the cottage behind them, happily ever after. He looked at the smoke in the picture. That was the witch burning. The happy ending included a picture of someone burning to death. And the humans called this a children's story. Rextal closed the book very slowly. His hands were shaking. His mind was numb. He had made a terrible mistake. And somehow he knew this was only the beginning. The next morning was not pleasant for Rextal. He stood before an emergency session of the full Corvani Council. Every seat was filled. Every eye was fixed on him. The chamber was silent except for the soft hum of the air recyclers. Elder Crixana sat at the center of the high table. Her expression was grave. Beside her sat Councillor Venra and the other senior leaders of Corvani society, and beside Rextal stood Ambassador Kate Morrison. Kate had been summoned from her quarters early that morning. She had come without complaint, though she clearly did not understand what was happening. Her green eyes moved from face to face, trying to read the mood of the room. "Let us begin," Crixana said. Her voice was tired. "Ambassador Rextal, please explain what happened yesterday." Rextal stepped forward. He told the council everything. The storytime gathering, the reading of Hansel and Gretel, the reactions of the younglings. 3 children are still receiving treatment from mind healers, he concluded. 7 have refused to sleep without their parents present. 1 has not spoken since yesterday afternoon. A ripple of distress passed through the council. Corvani valued their children above all else. To hear that younglings had been harmed was deeply disturbing. Kate's face had gone pale. "I am so sorry," she said. "I had no idea. You should have stopped reading when they became upset." "I thought the ending would help," Rextal replied. "You told me these stories always end happily." "They do end happily. The witch burns to death. The children watch it happen." "How is that happy?" Kate opened her mouth to answer, then closed it again. She seemed to be struggling with something. "Perhaps," Councillor Venra suggested carefully, "you could explain more about these stories, Ambassador Morrison. Help us understand why humans tell such tales to their young." Kate nodded slowly. "I will try. But first, may I ask a question?" "Of course." "You said that some children are being treated by mind healers. What exactly traumatized them? The witch? The oven? The concept of being eaten?" "All of it," Rextal said. "But I think the abandonment disturbed them most. The idea that parents would leave children in a forest to die. We do not have such concepts in our culture. No parents on Corvin have ever abandoned children. Not in 10,000 years. Not since we were primitive beings living in caves. The very idea is horrifying to us. Kate was quiet for a moment. Then she asked another question. What about violence? You said you had no word for murder until recently. That is correct. We had to look it up in historical archives. The word had not been used in living memory. So no Corvani has killed another Corvani in thousands of years? Correct. What about war? Battles, armed conflict? Elder Crixena answered this one. Our last war occurred 11,000 years ago. It was a conflict over territory that lasted 3 days. 47 people died. We consider it the greatest tragedy in our history. Kate's expression changed. Something shifted in her eyes. It was not pity exactly. More like sudden understanding. I see, she said softly. I think I understand now why you reacted the way you did. Then please explain it to us, Venra said. Because we do not understand it all. Kate took a deep breath. May I be blunt? Some of what I say may be disturbing. Please proceed. Hansel and Gretel is one of our gentler fairy tales. The council chamber went very quiet. One of the gentler ones. Crixena repeated. Yes, would you like me to summarize some others? No one spoke. Kate took that as permission to continue. There is a story called Little Red Riding Hood. A wolf eats a young girl's grandmother alive. He then disguises himself in her clothing and tries to eat the girl too. A hunter arrives and cuts the wolf open with an axe to rescue both the grandmother and the girl. Several council members made sounds of distress. There is Snow White. A queen orders a huntsman to murder her stepdaughter and bring back her heart as proof. The girl escapes and lives with 7 small miners in the forest. The queen tries to kill her 3 more times. Finally, she succeeds with a poisoned apple. But a prince revives the girl with a kiss. At the wedding, the queen is forced to wear shoes made of hot iron and dance until she falls down dead. A council member fainted. Medical workers rush to help. There is Cinderella. A girl is enslaved by her stepfamily. With magic help, she attends a ball and wins the heart of a prince. At the wedding, birds peck out the eyes of her cruel stepsisters. Please stop, Venra said weakly. His fur had gone gray with shock. I am not trying to disturb you, Kate said. Her voice was gentle now. I am trying to help you understand. These stories are old. Very old. They come from a time when life was much harder for humans. How hard? Crixena asked. Kate considered the question. In the era when these stories were first told, the average human could expect to experience famine at least once in their lifetime. Disease killed half of all children before they reached adulthood. Violence was common. War was constant. The world was full of dangers that could kill you at any moment. That sounds terrible. It was terrible. But humans survived. We adapted. And part of how we adapted was through our stories. Rextel stepped forward. What do you mean? How can such violent stories help children survive? Kate turned to face him directly. Let me ask you something, Ambassador. What do Corvani fairy tales teach children? Rextel thought about it. Cooperation, kindness, sharing, helping others. Those are good lessons for a safe world. But what if the world is not safe? What if there are wolves in the forest and witches in the woods? What if your own family might betray you? What do you teach children then? No one answered. Human fairy tales are not meant to comfort children, Kate continued. They are meant to prepare them. They teach that the world contains real evil, that people who seem kind might want to harm you, that you cannot always trust authority figures to protect you. That seems like a harsh thing to teach children, Crixena observed. It is harsh, but it is also true. At least it was true for most of human history. And here is the important part. Kate's voice grew stronger. Our fairy tales do not just warn children about danger. They also teach children that danger can be overcome. She pointed at the book of fairy tales, which Vextel still held. Yes, there is a witch who wants to eat children, but a clever girl defeats the witch. Yes, there is a wolf who eats grandmothers, but a brave hunter saves the day. Yes, there's a cruel queen with poison and murder, but good wins in the end. Through more violence, Venra pointed out. Yes, through more violence. Because sometimes violence is the only answer. Sometimes the only way to stop a monster is to become more dangerous than the monster. The council chamber was very quiet. You are saying, Crixena said slowly, that humans teach their children to fight. To kill, to survive at any cost. Kate nodded. We teach them that the world is dangerous. We teach them that evil exists. And we teach them that they have the power to fight back. That is what our happy endings mean. Not that the world is safe, but that we can make it safe. Even if we have to push witches into ovens to do it. Vextel looked down at the book in his hands. The cheerful cover, the smiling children. The dark forest behind them, he was beginning to understand. And what he understood frightened him more than any fairy tale ever could. The council session continued for many hours. Kate Morrison stood at the center of the chamber. She had requested permission to give a full presentation about human history and culture. The council had agreed. They needed to understand. They were afraid not to understand. Vextel sat in the front row, watching and listening. His feelings were mixed. Part of him was horrified by what he was learning. Part of him was fascinated. And a small part of him, a part he did not want to admit existed, was impressed. Kate activated a holographic display. A blue and green planet appeared floating in the air above the council floor. Earth, the human homeworld. This is where we come from, Kate said. A small planet in a quiet corner of the galaxy. It does not look dangerous from up here, but appearances can deceive. She zoomed in on the planet. Forests and mountains and oceans filled the display. Humans evolved on the grasslands of a continent called Africa. We were not the strongest animals. We were not the fastest. We did not have claws or fangs or armor. By all logic, we should have gone extinct millions of years ago. But you survived, Crixena said. We did more than survive. We conquered our planet. We became the most successful predator in Earth's history. Do you know how? Tools? Venra guessed. Technology? Those came later. In the beginning, we had 2 advantages. Kate held up her hand, showing her 5 fingers. First, we had these hands that could grip and throw. We became the best throwers in the animal kingdom. We could kill from a distance. She touched her head. Second, we had these brains that could plan and coordinate. We hunted in groups. We communicated. We set traps and ambush. We did not just react to danger. We anticipated it. We prepared for it. The display changed. Now it showed ancient humans hunting a massive woolly creature with spears. We drove dozens of species to extinction. Not because we were stronger, because we were smarter. And more importantly, because we never gave up. We were persistent, patient, relentless. You make it sound like you were monsters, a young council member said. Kate shook her head. We were survivors. There is a difference. We did not kill for pleasure. We killed because the alternative was death. The world we evolved in gave us 2 choices, be predator or be prey. We chose predator. She changed the display again. Now it showed human settlements throughout history. Small villages, walled cities, vast empires. As we grew in numbers, we faced a new problem. Competition from other humans. Resources were limited. Land was limited. Food was limited. And humans, it turns out, are very good at fighting each other. War, Verfextel said quietly. Yes, war. For most of our history, war was constant. Not occasional, constant, every generation new battle. Every family lost members to violence. It was simply part of life. The display showed battle scenes from throughout human history. Armies clashing with swords and spears. Soldiers fighting in trenches. Explosions and fire and destruction. The council watched in stunned silence. How many humans have died in wars? Crixana asked. Kate paused. Estimates vary. But in the last century alone, our world wars killed approximately 100 million people. Gasps filled the chamber. Some council members looked ill. 100 million, Venra repeated. That is more than the entire population of our planet. Yes, and those were not our worst weapons. By the middle of our last century, we had developed bombs that could destroy entire cities in a single blast. We built thousands of them. We pointed them at each other. For decades, we lived with the knowledge that we could end our own civilization at any moment. Why did you not use them? We almost did. Several times. But we held back. Some say luck saved us. Others say wisdom. I think it was something else. I think we looked at our own capacity for destruction and realized that we needed to change. We needed to find another way. The display changed again. Now it showed humans building things instead of destroying them: hospitals, schools, space stations. In the last few generations, humans have made more progress than in all of our previous history combined. We ended most of our wars. We cured many of our diseases. We fed most of our hungry. We reached out to the stars. We found other life in the universe. We joined the Galactic Council. Kate let the display fade. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each council member in turn. But we did not forget where we came from. We could not afford to forget, because the universe is still dangerous. There are still wolves in the forest. There are still witches in the woods. And we know from our own history what happens to species that are not prepared to defend themselves. They die, Rextal said. They die. Or they are conquered. Or they are enslaved. The galaxy is not as peaceful as you might believe. Your people have been lucky. Your world is remote. Your resources are modest. No one has considered you worth conquering. But that could change. Crixana shifted in her seat. Are you threatening us, Ambassador? No, I am warning you. Humanity means you no harm. We genuinely want peace and friendship. But we are not the only species in the galaxy. There are others who are not so kind. Others who take what they want without asking. And if such others came to our world? Kate smiled. It was not a cruel smile. But it was not entirely gentle either. Then you would discover why humans tell their children stories about fighting monsters. Because we have been fighting monsters for a very long time. And we have become very good at it. The chamber was silent. Then Counselor Venra asked the question that everyone was thinking. How good? Kate considered the question. Our ships are not the largest in the galaxy. Our armies are not the biggest. Our technology is not the most advanced. But in every conflict we have fought since joining galactic society, we have won. Sometimes against species that should have been far superior to us. How is that possible? Because we do not fight fair. We do not fight by rules. We fight to survive. We fight with everything we have. We use tricks and traps and tactics that other species consider dishonorable. We never give up. We never surrender. We keep fighting until we win or we die. Kate paused. Your species has not known war in 10,000 years. You have forgotten what it means to fight for survival. That is a wonderful thing. It means you have built a truly peaceful society. But it also means that if danger ever comes to your world, you will not know how to respond. And humans would know. Humans wrote the book on it, literally. Kate gestured at the fairy tale book that Rextal still held. Those stories you found so disturbing? They are training manuals. They teach children that danger is real, that evil exists, and that the only way to survive is to be clever and brave and willing to fight. She looked at Rextal directly. You asked me what kind of species we are. We are the species that survived everything our world threw at us. Ice ages, famines, plagues, predators, each other. We survived because we learned to fight. And we never unlearned it. We never will. Rextal met her gaze. For the first time, he truly understood the hardness he had seen in human eyes. It was not cruelty. It was not aggression. It was readiness. The calm certainty of a species that knew exactly how to deal with threats, and despite everything, he found it strangely comforting. 6 months passed after Kate Morrison's speech to the Council. Life on Corvin Prime returned to normal, more or less. The cultural exchange continued, though human literature was now carefully screened before being shared with children. Rextol worked closely with Kate to select stories that would not traumatize young Corvani minds. They became friends during this time. Strange friends, perhaps? An alien who had never known violence and a human who carried the weight of her species' bloody history. But friendship often grows in unexpected places. One morning, Rextol was working in his office when his communication device buzzed with an urgent alert. He read the message twice, unable to believe what he was seeing. Hostile fleet detected entering Corvani space. Unknown origin. 200 warships. Estimated arrival, 3 days. His blood ran cold. He rushed to the council chamber. Elder Crixina was already there, along with most of the senior leaders. Their faces were pale. Their ears were flat with fear. "We have confirmed the report," Crixina said. Her voice was shaking. "The ships belong to the Vrekener Dominion. They are a militaristic empire from the outer reaches. They have conquered 12 worlds in the past century. What do they want?" Venra asked. "Us, apparently. Our planet. Our people. Our resources." Crixina's voice broke. "We have received their transmission. They have given us 1 day to surrender. If we refuse, they will attack. They say they will take what they want regardless." Panic swept through the chamber. Council members were shouting, crying, arguing. No one knew what to do. They had no military, no weapons, no defenses. They did not even have a word for surrender in their language. Because they had never needed one, Vrextol pushed through the crowd to the communication station. His hands moved across the controls. He opened a channel to the human embassy. Kate Morrison's face appeared on the screen within seconds. She looked like she had been expecting his call. "Ambassador Vrextol," she said. "I just received word about the Vrekener fleet. Kate, we need help. We have nothing. No ships, no weapons, nothing. They will destroy us." Kate's expression was calm, impossibly calm. "I have already contacted Earth. The Third Fleet is being mobilized as we speak. Admiral Chris Donovan will lead the response personally." Relief flooded through Vrextol. "How many ships can you send?" 12. The relief vanished. 12? "Kate, the Vrekener have 200 ships." "I know. That is not enough. How can 12 ships fight 200? Kate smiled. It was the same smile she had worn when describing fairy tales. Gentle on the surface. Something harder underneath. "Do you remember what I told you about human stories, Vrextol? About how we deal with monsters?" "I remember. Trust us. Keep your people calm. Stay inside when the fighting starts. And whatever you do not watch if you have a weak stomach." The communication ended. Vrextol stood frozen at the station. The council chamber had gone quiet. Everyone had heard the conversation. 12 ships, Venra said weakly. "They are sending 12 ships against 200. "They are insane," someone muttered. "They are human," Crixana corrected quietly. "Perhaps there is no difference." The next 2 days were the longest of Vrextol's life. The Corvani could do nothing but wait and watch as the Vrekener fleet approached. The enemy ships were massive, bristling with weapons. They moved through space like predators stalking prey. The human fleet arrived on the second day. 12 ships. Small ships by galactic standards. They took up position between the Vrekener and Corvin Prime. Vrextol watched the tactical display from the council chamber. The size difference was almost comical. The Vrekener fleet was a wall of metal and fire. The human fleet was barely a line. The Vrekener commander sent a message to the human ships. "Move aside, little vessels. This does not concern you. We have no quarrel with humanity." Admiral Chris Donovan responded. His voice was pleasant, almost friendly. "I am afraid we cannot do that. The Corvani are under our protection. If you want them, you will have to go through us. Through you? The Reckoner commander laughed. You have 12 ships. We have 200. This is not a battle. This is a joke. I have heard that before, Donovan replied, usually right before the punchline. The Reckoner commander stopped laughing. So be it, destroy them. The Reckoner fleet surged forward. 200 warships against 12. The tactical display showed the enemy ships closing the distance rapidly. In moments, they would be in weapons range. Rextal closed his eyes. He could not watch his new friends die. Then the human ships moved. They did not retreat. They did not scatter. They charged directly at the Reckoner fleet. Rextal's eyes snapped open. What are they doing? The human ships were accelerating to impossible speeds. They wove between the Reckoner vessels like fish swimming through coral. And they were firing. Not energy weapons. Something else. Small objects that flew from the human ships and attached to Reckoner hulls. Mines, Crixana breathed. They are planting mines on the enemy ships. The first explosions began 30 seconds later. Reckoner ships started dying. One by one at first. Then in groups. The mines detonated in sequence, tearing through armor and engines and weapon systems. The Reckoner tried to shoot them off, but the mines were too small, too fast, too numerous. And still the human ships kept moving, kept planting, kept destroying. The Reckoner fleet fell into chaos. Ships collided with each other trying to avoid the human vessels. Commanders screamed orders that no one could follow. Some ships tried to retreat. The humans cut them off. It took less than an hour. When the explosions stopped, the Reckoner fleet was gone. Not defeated. Not retreating. Gone. 200 ships reduced to expanding clouds of debris. Admiral Chris Donovan appeared on the communication screen. He looked tired but satisfied. There was a small cut on his forehead. Otherwise, he seemed unharmed. Ambassador Rextal, he said, please tell your people they are safe now. The Reckoner will not be bothering anyone for a long time. Rextal's voice came out as a whisper. What happened to their fleet? Same thing that happens to all wolves and witches, Ambassador. Donovan shrugged. We gave them a happy ending. The screen went dark. Rextal stood in silence for a very long time. The council chamber was completely still. No one moved. No one spoke. Then Rextal walked slowly to his desk. He opened a drawer. He took out the book of human fairy tales that Kate Morrison had given him. He opened it to the last page of Hansel and Gretel. 2 smiling children. Bags of gold. Smoke rising from the cottage chimney, and they lived happily ever after. He understood now. He finally understood. Human happy endings were not about peace. They were about victory. They were about survival. They were about pushing the witch into the oven and walking away through the forest with the treasure. The Reckoner had come to conquer the Corvani. They had 200 ships and thousands of soldiers and weapons that could crack planets. They had every advantage, but they had made one fatal mistake. They had threatened people that humans cared about, and humans, as it turned out, were very good at giving monsters happy endings. Rextal closed the book gently. He placed it back in the drawer. Then he went to find Kate Morrison. He wanted to thank her. And he wanted to ask her something. He wanted to know if humans would teach the Corvani how to tell better bedtime stories, because Rextal had a feeling that the universe was not done sending wolves to his door. And when the next ones came, he wanted his people to be ready. He wanted them to know how to push back, and maybe, just maybe, he wanted them to know how to give monsters the endings they deserved, happily ever after, the human way.